Welcome back to the Spoonie and Caregiver Live podcast with me, your host, Jordan Banderas. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the podcast. And let's go ahead and get into today's episode, shall we? Now, I came across this interview with Jada Pinkett Smith and Jay Shetty a while back, and I've been pondering on it because at one point in the interview, she talks about how she had to put her warrior down. Once I listened to that, I was like, what? Like, how do you put your warrior down? Because her story, or I mean, she and I were raised with similar backgrounds. Like, she was raised pretty much to defend herself, the way that she tells her story. So her story hit the spot with me because the way that I had been raised was pretty much to defend myself at all times. Like, I was on fight mode from a very young age, and I have talked about that. So I was thinking about it, about what she said, like how you have to put your warrior down. And since I was in fight mode since I was little, I was like, well, how come I've been on fight mode for this long? Because I listened to this not too long ago, so I'm 34. So I've been on fight mode for like 34 years, 30 years. Because I started working on myself around like when I was like 30. But let me share with you some of the things that I went through so you guys can see why I had to be prepared to defend myself at all times. Now, obviously, as you guys know, I was raised in Mexico, but here's the thing though. The streets in Mexico are not the safest. Yeah, they're okay, but they're not the safest. And I had to be prepared to pretty much defend myself in case that somebody tried to jump me or anything like that. So I was very tense. And believe me, when I started using my percussion gun, I felt the tension. Like the tension in my body was extreme at one point. But anyway, let me continue with this because I also grew up in a very abusive household. I saw things that no child should see, like my brother getting stabbed in front of me, my grandpa dying in front of me. And where I used to live in Mexico, there was a river that will run close to where my apartment was located. And because I had to walk through it or by it, anytime that I would go to school, there were a few times that I would see cops pull bodies out of that river. And I was like 12, 13. I would say like the first body that I saw, I was like 8. So that left an impression on me. Like I was like, I'm not gonna end up like that, you know? I also walked through some places that were not the nicest or not the safest, where if I had something nice, it could have been taken away from me like immediately. Like somebody will come up to me or it can come up to you and say like, I want that, and just take it. Either you give it, either you give it to them, or you could even die. Like this is no joke. Like I saw this on the news while I was growing up multiple times, where there was this story that actually stuck with me, where this old guy was killed for the equivalent of $5, literally. And I was like, why would you kill somebody for like $5, you know? So by seeing that on the news and seeing everything on TV that was happening, you know, with the violence and everything, I had to be ready when I go outside. Like I'm like, nothing's gonna happen to me. So all of this made me a very defensive person at a very young age. Like I was extremely defensive. I was ready to attack. Like yeah, I was ready to attack. So I feel that I feel like due to all of these experiences, I had to sharpen my teeth. So the other sharks in the ocean wouldn't try to attack me, or at least that's how I see my childhood. That's one of the things that or I mean that's one of the ways that I see my childhood. Like I had to literally be ready to fight, no matter who it was. It could have been somebody in my family, it could have been somebody in the streets. Is like I had to be ready. So my warrior was like ready. Like my defenses were like ready. But after listening to Jada Pinkett Smith's story, I realized that my defenses were still acting like if I was in Mexico, even though I left there like 21 years ago. It's actually going to be almost 21 years in July. Well, actually, it's going to be 21 years in July since I left Mexico. So after I came up with this conclusion that I was still on like that defensive mode where nobody could penetrate it, I realized that I had to do something because I had built an impenetrable armor. Like I had defenses. I had this. The irony behind this. I had this wall, and believe me, I'm Mexican, so I had this wall that it was impenetrable. I Nobody could get in, and I couldn't get out because it was indestructible in my mind. You know, like I didn't want to get hurt physically or emotionally. So after I listened to this interview, I was like, oh crap, I'm done with therapy at this point. So I was like, what do I have to do to start working on myself? So one of the things that I did is that I had to think back about what therapy taught me. So I was like, I have the tools to work on this on my own. Like I don't have to go back to therapy, which is what a lot of people are afraid of, that they have to go back to therapy. And sometimes when you have to do that, you might feel like a failure. But in my case, one of the, like I said, like what I realized is that therapy gave me the tools to work on things like this. So what I had to do at that point is use those tools that therapy gave me, and I had to start fine tuning my defenses and start letting people in, which for a lot of us is gonna be hard. Like I never let people in emotionally because I was afraid of getting hurt. So the first connection that I had to make in this situation after I started working on my defenses, I realized that I had to create connections, and the first connection that I had to make was with my wife, because she's the person that I spend the most time with. So I worked on that. I let her in. And one of the things that has come out of this is that our marriage is actually a lot stronger than it has ever been, because now she understands where I come from, literally, and why sometimes I can come off as aggressive or almost like, yeah, like aggressive, like, like putting people down or anything like that. It's not because I want to put them down or anything like that. It's because I'm still working on that. All I knew was like, being defensive. That's all I knew. So now I'm learning how to be nice, how to be like less defensive. Because when I started working on my marriage, like I said, I created the first connection, and I love that connection. So I'm like, okay, now I did it with my wife, and now I can do it with other people, because like I have said before, like with the podcast, I want to be able to help people to understand that you're not alone. You're not an outcast. You just need to first sometimes understand yourself as to what's going on inside your head. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I have seen so many people, especially caregivers and spoonies, that are acting the same way that I used to. They're very defensive, which is understandable, and they don't let people in. And I know that when you're facing an illness, it's hard because you have to take care of someone when you're a caregiver, and when you're a spoonie, you have to take care of yourself. So you're facing an illness that might not go away, so that's gonna give you stress. And when you're taking care of your spoonie or of somebody, that still is gonna give you stress. And because of all of this, we increase our defenses because we don't want to feel hurt. And at one point, unfortunately, we all feel hurt sometimes, you know? Or at one point, we're all gonna feel hurt. So we want to avoid that because we don't want to get distracted. Or at least in my case, I didn't want to get distracted from taking care of my wife. Like I didn't want to think about like, oh, I'm in pain because of this person doing that. So I didn't let anybody in because all I wanted to do was take care of my wife. That's pretty much all I wanted to do. But when you have to deal with people that don't understand you, including doctors, and they're acting like you're faking it, or you feel like they don't understand what you're going through, we tend to increase our defenses because we want to fight for ourselves. We want to be understood. So we're gonna fight. We're gonna be like, hey, I'm here. You need to listen to me. You need to understand what I'm saying. So when we do that, we increase our defenses. Or I mean, when we do that, either we increase our defenses or we get hurt. So we need to work on a balance on that, because that's something that I've been working on, especially when it comes to my wife. Like when doctors act like she is faking it or they don't really understand, like I get very mad about that because I'm like, no, you need to listen to us. But now I'm a little bit more calm, so I can explain it to the doctors and be like, no, listen, this is what's happening, and I can do that without feeling hurt. And the same thing happens with my wife. Now she's able to do the same thing. She's able to explain how she's feeling and talk to the doctor without feeling hurt by the doctor not understanding her. And when I started working on this, it wasn't easy. Like, let me tell you this, it wasn't easy. It was hard, but based on all of my experiences that I had growing up, I knew that I had to do something. But what has helped me the most is pretty much what I'm going to talk about right now. One of the things that I started doing is that I started to try to understand others points of view, like other people's point of view. So I don't take everything like I was being personally attacked and react in a very defensive manner, like I know I used to. Like somebody will say something and I will take offense to that and I will get mad and I start like, like ready. I will start getting ready to fight. So that this is something that has helped me a lot because it lets me see things as the other person and not just as myself. So when somebody does that, pretty much what we're doing is that we're trying to understand where that other person is coming from, like why they don't understand what we're trying to say, or why they're saying what they're saying the way that they're saying it. And that has helped me a lot because I see it with myself. Like I said, like I tend to be very aggressive because that's all I knew, aggression. So now I'm learning how to be nice. And the same thing happens when you're talking to somebody that is not understanding you. It's like they don't see your point of view, so they're only gonna see it from their end, and they might not see your illness because it's invisible. The doctor does the same thing. Like they see you in front of them, but they don't see the illness, so they don't really know what to do. So that has helped me a lot understand like why doctors sometimes don't believe in certain illnesses, because they don't see it. They're very logical almost. Like they think like, oh, if this illness is so bad, I should be able to find out more issues about it. Like, oh, you shouldn't even be able to walk, like things like that happen. So that's something that has helped me. And 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 one of the things that I want to say is that this is something that we can all try and see if it works, because there's a lot of people, I will say, especially with everything that's going on right now and everything that happened last year, and everything that's been happening lately. We're in a very defensive mode. Like our warriors are up and they're ready to fight. You see it on the news. Like everybody's arguing, everybody's fighting. So we need to kind of like tone it down a little bit, like scale back our defenses and try to listen to the other person, and without taking anything as an offense or anything like that. So this is not easy. Like like nothing is easy apparently. This is not easy since we need to lower our defenses, and that's one of the hardest things to do, because you might feel naked when you do that. But let me tell you this: never be afraid to lower your defenses, because the right person will appreciate it. That's how I see it with my wife. Like after I started lowering my defenses, I feel that she really appreciates it, because now I'm laying her into my life. And the same thing might happen to you. It could happen with your partner, your friends, and everything like that. So you might be able to create the connection that you need, but you have to work on lowering your defenses, just like I did. Because like I said, it's not easy. It's hard, but it can be done. And before I let you go, guys, I'm going to leave you with this question: is your warrior still active? Now, you can share the answer on the comments, or you can send me an email at this Spoonie and Caregiver life@gmail.com, if you want somebody to talk to, because this is very important. This is a very important question. If the answer is yes, obviously depending on how your life is going, and if it's affecting you, this is something that you might have to work on, just like I did. And if it's okay with you, you still like it and you don't see any problems with it, obviously that's fine with you. And if you don't have your warrior down, or you already control it, maybe you can give us some tips, because we can learn from each other. But that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about on today's episode. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all the new listeners, the new supporters. We're growing, and I really really appreciate it. So don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, so you don't miss any episodes of the podcast. And don't forget to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you want to share your story anonymously, you can send it to me at the Spoonie and Caregiver life@gmail.com, or you can post it on our Facebook community, which is a community for everybody. And I leave you like always. Always take care of yourself and have a great day.